Well, today's the day we're going to try to jam that into that. I thought about trying to clean the transmission up, but I really don't feel like it. I mean, it's not like this is a pristine, perfect car. It's going to get oily and dirty again anyways, I guess. But I can clean the pan and the other stuff inside the car. I just want to get her installed. Before I jam them in there, we were talking about my motor mounts and stuff here real briefly. So, well, obviously a V8 cross member. And then my motor mounts without the adapters for the inline. You know, they're kind of similar to the factory AMC motor mounts. I've got some somewhere, I just don't know where they're at. They're kind of open on one side so you can get your nuts and bolts on them and stuff, and they're similar to that, and they're pretty similar. In fact, you can modify a set of factory AMC motor mounts to bolt onto an LS motor, and it's a little tougher to get them in there, but they will jam in there and you can make them work. In fact, the first LS motor I had in this, that's what I used, was just factory AMC motor mount, or the bracket, motor brackets, whatever you want to call those. And that's what ran in this, the first setup LS it had, a little 4.8, which is kind of funny to even say that. Originally, all I had was a little 4.8 LS setup out of a 2-wheel drive van, and I painted that engine green at one time. And it's kind of funny how throughout all my LS motors I'll find a green bolt here and there, and that just means I robbed it out of that little 4.8. And that little 4.8 still to this day, I believe, is running. I sold it to a buddy and he put it back in a van, and as far as I know, he still drives that van. So but anyways, I got to get a couple things ready before I can stab it in. The other thing I was going to mention is leave your motor mounts loose. It's going to be a lot easier to get that in there if they're all loose. And then once the engine's sitting on them, and you got your cross member, your transmission cross member, which I've got to pull that one out because that one's not going to work. Then you can kind of adjust the motor side to side or whatever you want to do, and then bolt it down. And yes, you can move the motor side to side a little bit. And the motor favors the passenger side, the LS does, and that's true to the AMC setup. If you look at the cross member with there, and you look at it here, I would say it's about an inch, a little more different, maybe even an inch and a half difference, closer that way. And that's really just to clear the steering column. So, and I'm not a Mopar expert at all, but I'm pretty sure Mopar does the same thing. And then you can kind of see the difference if you look at that little oil pan relief there. This side is shorter than this side. So, but anyways, so they offset the motor, and it's the same thing with the LS. The LS kind of sits to the side a little bit, but that's just how it is. So I got to remove that cross member real quick. Get a few things kind of buttoned up, if you will, in here real fast before I slap this thing in there, and then hopefully we can just get that guy stabbed right in there. That's the idea. And I might take my air compressor and blow all this crap off of this real quick just to have it cleaned off. But that's what I've got to do for right now. Okay, well, it's in there. Unfortunately, because I'm an idiot, I chipped up my paint. So good thing I have a little touch paint thing, but I got it a little bit back there and right there. But luckily the intake will cover all that, so she's in there. Again, I left the rubber mounts completely loose and unbolted so I can fiddle with them when I'm getting the motor in. One thing you have to watch out for, and I've run into this before, is these rubber mounts are pretty cheap, like off of like Rock Auto and stuff like that. But I noticed they don't fit very well. Like the spacing between their bolts is hit or miss, whether it just fits right in or it don't. So that one on this side is a new Rock Auto, and I had a little bit of a fitment issue with it. I did have another old one if I needed to use it, but I just had a twist on that one a little bit, so it didn't just line up perfectly, but it is what it is. Now, another real big question I always get is, what do you do about the cross member? How, you know, this or that? There's so many different cross members for these AMCs. I mean, you got 4-speed, 3-speed, automatic, different year automatics. It really just depends on what cross member you have, but I have not run into one cross member where it was absolutely a nightmare to get in. In fact, this cross member right here, the only thing I had to do is drill a hole right there for the 4L60 mount. That's it. And it bolts to the factory spots on the car. So again, it really just depends on what mount you have and all that, but the worst I've ever had to do, and I think it was on the 4L80E, is I had to weld a inch plate to stick out an inch further and drill a hole in it. And a guy could just use those 4 bolt holes and bolt the plate on there if he wanted to too. But anyways, pretty simple. I haven't ran into anything crazy custom. And again, I think you can pretty much do all of this without a welder. You might have to bolt the plate on or something, or make a plate you have to bolt on, but you know, that's why I've never pursued trying to design a cross member, because there's just so many cross members, and you can typically just modify your AMC cross member and make it work just fine. I gotta stick that in there real quick to get the transmission lifted up to where it needs to be, and we might just throw a few glamour parts on it so we can see what it's gonna look like. All right, I spent some time and bolted a few things together, and it's kind of what she's starting to look like. It's amazing how much a set of tires and just having an engine inside of a shell will change it. So yeah, those are the wheels and tires that were on the Javelin that some of you didn't like. And I told you guys I had a mishap on Facebook where a deal didn't work out. Well, the deal was to get some wheels and tires that were going to look really good on the old Javelin there. So I was going to put these wheels and tires on the AMX because I think they look all right on the AMX, but that deal didn't work out. So I think I'm going to get something a little different for the Javelin on wheels. And the biggest reason why is these wheels here, I could change the tire size on them to make them a little better, but it makes the Javelin a little too low. Those tires sit about 1.5 inches higher than these tires. And the problem with these, if I put a taller tire on them, they would rub the fender wells pretty bad. Those tires have a different back spacing than these. So anyways, that's kind of where we're at. These tires here will be fine on the AMX. And yeah, so that's the story on the tires and the mystery item that made me mad on Facebook. Now, a couple things on this motor. Obviously, this was in the Gremlin. And, you know, it took all of that 8 inches of that hood scoop up there to close the hood with the air cleaner on. This is more than likely, I'm at least 70% for sure, I'm not going to use this intake. I just wanted to have it on there for the effect, I guess you can call it. Now I might use this intake. I'll have to look. I think I got the original top for the throttle body and it goes down here somewhere. If I have that top still, I'll probably use this intake because then I'll be able to shut the hood on it. And yes, the alternator will clear the hood. Just barely, but it will. The AMX hood I have has a hole cut in it already, but it's got a fiberglass hood scoop. But this is still way too much motor and stuff sticking up for that to work. The option I'm probably going to go with is just a fuel injection, low profile intake. They make them, they're pretty reasonable. They have a 4-barrel opening on them for a 4-barrel carburetor for some reason, even though it's fuel injection. I guess you could put 8 shot of nitrous into those ports if you're running a carburetor on it. But anyways, I can make an adapter plate to adapt the throttle body on top of that and at least have the old style air cleaner, but have the fuel injection. So that's probably what I'm going to go with, but we will figure that out when we get there. Now, it's amazing with this LS in this car, because it's been a while since it's had an LS in it, that I could never get a set of long tube headers to fit into this body. And it's mostly because of the trailing arm, the strut arm, I don't know what you call them, but they're kind of in the way of the headers. And the AMC V8s that I've ever dealt with long tube headers, they were just as much as a nightmare getting them to clear all of that. Because the LS headers pretty much want to sit right where that thing is. You know, and you got your bell housing and starter and everything else, so it's a little bit complicated to put long tube headers on this. There'd be a lot of fabrication involved. But if I see a really cheap set, I might buy a cheap set and see if we can't try to fabricate something. But more than likely, it's just going to have to be the shorties that kind of just end at a degree pointing straight down towards the back. And then I'll just have to build an exhaust from there. Now, this engine setup in this form ran perfect. I mean, and it got raced all the time. So even though it's a whole bunch of goofy looking motor in there, it's still super reliable the way it is. And I meant to show this the other day. Grab some random spark plugs and they all look the same. But that's how this LS motor's been burning. Pretty good if you ask me. So it's not burning oil, it's still running good. And yeah, like I said, even if I was to leave it completely like this, it would still work just fine. Now, obviously, I've got a lot of work to do to this car. I mean, we're not anywhere remotely close to doing anything. For one, the rear end got to get switched out. That's actually the old rear end that was in the Gremlin. And the rear end that was in this is in the Junkyard Javelin. And so on and whatnot. But I do have another V8 rear end to put in this. I would just use that Gremlin rear end, but it's got the little bitty rear brakes on it. And I can't remember. I think the brake drums is pretty messed up on one of them. And, you know, it's just a little 6-cylinder rear end. So I'm just going to put the V8 rear end in it and be done with it. Got to put a gas tank in it. Got to do a fuel line system on it. That's just dirt. Got to figure out what I'm going to do about all this paint problems I had. So, it sounds like somebody might be here at my shop, so I'll bring you back in a minute. All right, I don't remember where I was on this, but I think I was talking about everything that we got to get done on the car. So we got to do all the trim, got to figure out the paint. I got to figure out what I've done to this side of the suspension. The other side I had rebuilt and put all new bushings and everything and all that good stuff in it. But I had to move before I got that side done. And I think I already explained the rear end on this. So I have the old Bonneville stickers on there. Those make me happy, I guess. I got to do the fuel system, fuel lines. I got to do the brakes. The wiring is a big deal. The exhaust manifolds. We got a lot of stuff we got to do. Windshield wipers. I got to do the front fenders. Haven't even touched them or looked at them or painted them or nothing. I got the AMX hood we got to figure out, and it's not in the greatest shape, but it's usable. So it'll be a slow going project, but I'm excited. It's going to be real good to have the old girl up and running again. It's been far too long since I've been able to drive it. Maybe I'll buy a carpet kit for it this time instead of my homemade carpet I put in there. Oh, one last thing I forgot to mention. And I should have mentioned this all along, but you won't be able to see it. I forgot the 4L60E. The biggest problem with using that, or I think a 700R4, is you have to notch out the passenger side of the floor for that servo to fit. And so that means I've got to actually notch on the floor a little bit. It's not much. You don't have to notch a big chunk, but you got to notch a big enough notch for that servo to kind of poke through so you can actually center the transmission. And I forgot all about that. So if you don't do that, the tail shaft's going to be like over here instead of straight. I mean, you could run it that way. It wouldn't be a very straight shot. But so basically the transmission's got to kick over about an inch where it's at right now. So I can't actually mount the cross member bar because it won't fit right because the transmission is hitting the side of the transmission tunnel there. And I should have showed that on the Gremlin where I notched it to fit that. But turbo 400s, 4L80Es, you don't have to worry about that because I don't have a servo on the side of them. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. It'll probably be a little bit before we actually do another video on the AMX. I'm gonna tuck him in the corner, and I got to get some parts ordered for it, and I'll probably pick at the wiring here and there. A bunch of real tedious, time-consuming type of stuff I probably won't really videotape. Unless somebody really wants to see the wiring, then, you know, leave it in the comments and I'll see what I can do to try to at least go over it a little bit as I do it. But until then, I guess we'll see you in the next video.